Have you ever felt a connection so strong, so deep, that it needs no words to understand, no reason to explain? That is the story of Mira and Rocco, a young girl growing up in the heart of the Arandora forest, and an abandoned baby gorilla. But this is not just a story of a magical friendship, but a journey to discover the meaning of love, courage, and the strength to let go. Over the years growing up together, among the ancient trees, Mira and Rocco have created a bond that transcends all boundaries. But the jungle is not always a haven, and Mira must face the truth that the greatest love sometimes requires the greatest sacrifice to let Rocco return to the wild where he truly belongs. But can she let go? And is a gorilla so deeply attached to his companion, willing to leave his embrace to find freedom? The story does not end with the day of farewell. After many years, when memories seem to have been buried by time, an unexpected signal from the primeval forest sends Mira on a journey to find her old friend. But is she ready to face the changes? Will they still recognize each other? And most importantly, what lessons await Mira and us on this journey back? Before continuing the story, please share. Where did you find this story? By chance or from an inspiring introduction? Don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss the special story we will tell tomorrow, a story that will touch your heart. Are you ready for the next journey to discover the miracle? Mira grew up in the heart of the Arandora rainforest, where sunlight barely penetrates the dense foliage to create shimmering rays on the ground. Her home has no brick walls or city noises. Here, birdsong, trickling water, and the rustle of the wind in the treetops are the soundtrack to life. Her father, Dr. Kale, is a dedicated conservationist who has spent his life rescuing vulnerable creatures. Her mother, a nature artist, turns memories of the wilderness into vivid paintings. For Mira, the jungle is more than home. It is where all the magic begins. Everything changes the day Dr. Kale's rescue team brings home a motherless baby gorilla trembling in the calloused hands of a ranger. His name is Rocco. He tells Mira, the gorilla has just experienced unspeakable grief. His mother was killed by poachers. Mira looked into Rocco's big black eyes, filled with fear and loneliness, and she knew that their lives were connected from that moment on. From that day on, Mira became Rocco's little protector. She held him close when he woke up in the middle of the night. She coaxed him to drink milk from the bottle and tried every way to make him smile, even with a dry twig or a leaf. There were days when Mira lay on the ground, pretending to eat grass with Rocco, just to make him feel that he was not alone. You are not just his friend, Dr. Kale once said. You are his only ray of light in the darkness. As time passed, Rocco was no longer the shy gorilla he once was. He became curious about everything around him, from the butterflies flying around to the way Mira doodles on the ground. Every step Mira took, Rocco followed her like a loyal shadow that never left her side. To Mira, Rocco was more than just an animal. She was family, a friend she had never found in the human world. One afternoon, as the sun was setting behind the distant mountains, Mira held Rocco as she sat on the wooden steps in front of the rescue station. Rocco, if you could speak, what would you say to me? Mira asked softly. Rocco, as if he understood, reached out and gently touched her cheek, his eyes filled with trust and unconditional love. Mira smiled, tears welling up in her eyes. At that moment, she realized that there was a connection between humans and nature that was deeper than any language. Rocco was more than just a gorilla. He was a reminder that every living thing, big or small, deserved to be loved. And for Mira, that friendship was the flame that lit the path she would walk for the rest of her life, a path of protection and healing. Time passed like a stream winding through the Arendora forest. Rocco, the little gorilla he once was, had grown tall and strong, his black fur shining in the forest sunlight. His eyes were no longer fearful, but curious and confident, as if he were ready to explore the world out there. Mira looked at Rocco every day, feeling both proud and afraid. She knew that the day of separation was not far away. "Rocco won't belong to us forever. You know that," Dr. Kale said, his eyes thoughtful. Mira nodded, but felt as if a piece of her heart had just fallen. She had always known this, that her mission was not to keep Rocco by her side, but to prepare him for a life of freedom. But how could she easily let go of the friend she had grown up with, the one she had vowed to protect with all her heart? The day of separation had finally come. The rescue team was preparing to take Rocco to the Thousand Leaves Reserve, a vast section of primeval forest deep within Arendora, where he could live like a true wild gorilla. That morning, Mira woke up earlier than usual. She didn't want to miss a moment with Rocco. She brought his favorite treats, a few ripe bananas, and soft young leaves from the palm trees near the rescue station. But Rocco just sat there, his eyes fixed on her, as if he could sense what was about to happen. When the rangers arrived, carrying a large wooden cage to transport Rocco, Mira walked over. She knelt in front of Rocco, her eyes filled with love. "Rocco, you'll be okay, right? You'll be strong, you'll be free, and you'll live the life I've always wanted for you," she whispered. Rocco reached out and gently touched her shoulder, as if to comfort her. Mira hugged Rocco tightly, feeling its strong breathing and the warmth of its familiar fur. "I love you, Rocco. Wherever you are, I will always remember you." Mira's voice was hoarse, but she still smiled, trying to hide the tears that were rolling down her cheeks. Rocco was injected with a mild sedative to keep her calm during the journey. Before the cage was closed, Mira placed a kiss on its head. She stepped back, her legs restrained by the pain. Rocco looked at her through the wooden bars, his eyes filled with something that could not be expressed in words, like a silent promise, like a thank you. As the truck carrying Rocco disappeared behind the trees, Mira stood still. A part of her heart had left with it, but she knew it was the right thing to do. She looked up at the sky, where the first rays of the day were tearing through the mist. "Live well, Rocco," she whispered. From that day on, Arendora Forest seemed to be missing a part of its soul. But Mira knew that every step Rocco took in the Thousand Leaves Reserve was a testament to the meaning of freedom, and that great love is not about holding on, but about letting go. 18 years have passed, and time flows like a river, carrying both beautiful memories and lingering nostalgia. Mira is now an adult, an animal conservationist who follows in her father's footsteps, continuing her journey to save wild creatures. But no matter how many animals she rescues, her heart still holds the image of a gorilla, Rocco, the friend she once loved like family. One day, news from the Thousand Leaves Reserve made Mira's heart flutter. A group of rangers reported that they had seen a large gorilla with shiny black fur and deep, intelligent eyes. They described it as leading a troop of wild gorillas in the area. Without further explanation, Mira knew it was Rocco. She felt something in her heart, a whisper. It's time to find her old friend. Her father, Dr. Kahl, was now old and in poor health, but he understood his daughter's feelings. "Go, Mira. You need to see it, and it needs to see you," he said. Mira nodded, her heart filled with determination. The journey back to Arendora Forest was not easy. Mira and her group of guides traveled through muddy paths, treacherous cliffs, and deep, icy rivers. But every step was a step closer to what she called the home of her heart. Memories of Roko appeared clearly, from the innocent look in her eyes to the times she held her hand, as if to say, "I believe you." The first day of searching passed in silence. Arendora Forest was now green, but it was also larger and wilder than ever. Mira felt her smallness in this majestic nature. Will Roko remember me? Will I find him? She wondered. On the second day, as the sunset began to tinge the forest with gold, Mira suddenly saw a large shadow looming through the leaves. She held her breath. In the distance, a troop of gorillas was moving, but one was larger than all of them. It stood in the center, its black fur shining like a warrior of the jungle. Mira felt her heart pounding. It was Roko. She walked forward, slowly but surely. Roko turned her head, its deep eyes meeting hers. In that moment, time seemed to stop. Mira didn't know if Roko recognized her, but she believed that there was still an invisible thread between them, a thread of love and memory. Roko approached, each step heavy but authoritative. The guides held their breath, ready to intervene if anything dangerous happened. But Mira raised her hand, signaling that she didn't need help. "Roko," she called, her voice broken with emotion. Roko stopped, his eyes fixed on her, as if searching for something in his memory. And then, suddenly, he bowed his head, moved closer, and pressed his forehead against Mira's. A familiar gesture from the old days. Mira couldn't hold back her tears. She reached out to touch Roko's head, feeling the soft fur, the warm breath, and the strong beating heart of her old friend. "I promised to find you, and you kept your promise to wait for me," she whispered. The gorillas stopped, watching from afar. They seemed to know that this was Roko's moment, a moment that could not be disturbed. Mira and Roko stood there, together in the middle of the primeval forest. No words were spoken, but the love and bond between them were enough to melt any heart. As the sun set, Mira sat with the gorillas, watching Roko play with her cubs. She felt joy and peace in her heart. Roko has lived the life she dreamed of, free, wild, yet still gentle and loving. The journey to find Roko is not just about rekindling old friendships. It is also Mira's journey to find herself, to remember that love, sacrifice, and compassion are always the bridge between humans and nature. The last morning with Roko came quietly, but Mira's heart was in turmoil. She knew that, like the farewell years ago, today she would have to say goodbye to the friend her heart had always held dear. But this time, Roko had a family. Playful baby gorillas climbing around him, adults trustingly following his lead. This, she told herself, was a more fulfilling farewell than she had ever dared to hope for. Mira sat down beside Roko, feeling the silence of the forest resonate with her. Roko, somehow, seemed to understand this too. He gently sat down beside her, his deep eyes still filled with a connection that time could not erase. "You have become the person I always believed you would be," Mira whispered, her voice trembling in the thin morning air. Roko leaned down, placing his large hand on her shoulder, a gesture of kindness and trust. Mira felt a strange feeling in her heart, both pain and relief. She reached out to touch Roko's hand, feeling the familiar warmth that she thought she would never find again. When it was time to leave, Roko stood up. his eyes following her every step. Mira turned back one last time, placing her hand on her chest, as if to say that in her heart, Rocco would always be present. Rocco's eyes did not leave her, but he did not move forward. It seemed that he understood that the only thing he could do in return for her love was to continue living a free, strong life, as she had hoped. Stepping onto the boat, Mira felt a dull but beautiful pain. She knew that this might be the last time she saw Rocco, but she also knew that love did not need presents to exist. Rocco stood there, in the middle of the deep green forest, as a symbol of love and connection that would never fade. As the boat disappeared around the bend, Mira smiled through her tears, knowing she had done the right thing. Because true love sometimes is letting go. The story of Mira and Rocco is not only about the friendship between a girl and a gorilla, but also a profound lesson about love, commitment, and the courage to let go. We learn that true love is not about holding on, but about creating conditions for the person you love to live freely, living true to their nature and dreams. Even though space or time are far apart, that love is always present, like an invisible thread connecting heart to heart. Mira not only found her old friend, but she also found a part of herself. Her belief in the healing power of nature and her gratitude for what she had experienced. Perhaps this story also reminds each of us of the value of sincere connections, whether they come from people, animals, or nature. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you feel inspired, please click like to spread the message of love. Don't forget to share the story with people you care about and leave a comment about something positive you learned from this story. Let love, awareness, and compassion touch many hearts.